How do you protect your son-in-law from taking off with the inheritance that you leave to your daughter? Right, big concern for a lot of families is, hey, you've accumulated assets, or you have a house, and you want to leave it to one of your kids, but you're concerned that their spouse, if they were to get divorced, would end up taking half of it, all of it, and then ultimately, everything you've worked so hard to accumulate doesn't go to your kids or to your grandchildren. It goes to, this ex spouse. So how can you plan for it? One of the things that, we tell people is, listen, if your child is married, if you give them something, and that gets what we would call commingled with other funds or anything like that, that becomes part of the marriage, part of the marital assets. So, for example, even while you're alive, let's say that you give your child $50,000, and he or she puts that into a bank account that they have with their spouse. That's part of the marriage. So for all intents and purposes, $25,000 is your child, and the other $25,000 is his or hers. If they were to get divorced, the day after that hit the bank account, half of that most likely is going to go to them. So really, anything that you give to them, that it gets commingled, or you buy them a house. We see this sometimes, and your intention is, hey, no, I'm buying this house for my daughter, for my son. That's their house. Well, if they get divorced, that's most likely going to be split between the two of them, because they're enjoying that asset together. It's become part of the marriage. So there's a couple things that you could do, and possibly something your children to do. Number one, if they're agreeable to it, is they would do a prenuptial agreement. So a prenuptial agreement is before they get married, essentially saying, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, anything that's gifted to me is mine, and same goes for you. And that works great. But again, remember, if the assets get commingled, it becomes a little bit tricky to say, hey, you put $50,000 into this bank account, and I put in $25,000, so part of this should be mine, part of it should be yours. But if you're using that money for the marriage, for the benefit of the marriage, you're paying rent, you're buying food, all that sort of stuff, it's going to be difficult. So, but a prenuptial agreement could be a good idea. If they're already married, and we see this sometimes where they've been married for a little while and the parents are getting older, and maybe now they want to give something to their child, but they're concerned that, again, them getting divorced and walking away with half of it. So they could do a postnuptial agreement, which a postnuptial agreement is similar to a prenup as far as who gets what of, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. It just happens after the marriage. So there's a postnuptial agreement. But not everybody wants to do that. Not every couple is okay with that. So, one of the things you could do if you're going to leave something to your kids is you set it up in trust for them, right? Now, if all you have is a will, or you don't even have a will, but if it's going to probate, that money or house is going to go directly to your child, in which case, again, it's going to be subject to the divorce if that were to unfortunately happen. What you can do, though, is you can leave the money, you can leave the house, and you can set it up in a trust for your child, for your daughter, let's say. Now, your child, your daughter, can have access to that money. She can go in, she can withdraw money, and let's say you leave her, $500,000. Well, and she goes in and she takes out $50,000. That $50,000 that she took out would be subject to them getting divorced, right? Because she took it out, it's part of the marriage, she's using it for the benefit of the marriage. Maybe she took it out and she put it in a joint account, or she used it and they spent it on home improvements, something like that. That's going to be subject to the divorce. But the other $450,000 that is still in the trust could arguably be protected from any sort of divorce, because that was money that was left for her via trust from her parents as part of her inheritance. And so language in the trust would protect that, the bulk of that money from being subject to the divorce. So that's a really great thing that we like to do, for our clients if they're concerned about that, or maybe they're not even concerned about it. It's just, the divorce rate is over 50%. So chances are that someone's going to get divorced. So we want to make sure that anything they get would be protected, because again, last thing most parents want is the money that they leave to their kids goes to their ex-spouse and ultimately not benefiting their kids or to their grandchildren.